Hi everyone, Big Thinny Ouch Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of this new King Krule record, Space Heavy. This is a brand new LP from UK singer and songwriter Archy Marshall, aka King Krule, a guy whose music has been on a remarkably despondent trajectory for a minute now. So much so there have been moments that I've just found to be straight up unpalatable, most notably the fan favorite The Ooze, an incredibly repetitive, dreary, and skeletal record whose fans love to just wallow in if this top comment from a previous review is any indicator. However, I really enjoyed the follow-up to this project several years later, Man Alive, which, for my money, delivered similarly depressive vibes, but actually focused them into song structures and performances that had impact. And I think Space Heavy is turning things up on the visceral side too. Now, don't get me wrong, this thing is still a very dark and moody record that most likely you are going to need to be in a certain headspace for. But that does not stop Archy from flexing his songwriting skills on this thing and delivering some pretty fiery performances. Whether it be on the thumping beats and milky post-punk bass lines, as well as punk jazz passages throughout the track Pink Shell, a moment where the album really makes me want to lose it. There's also the climactic finish of That Is My Life, That Is Yours, that also features some wailing saxophone too. Meanwhile, Hamburgerphobia's tight drums and chorused, detuned riffs bring this intense sense of unease, over which Archy, in this very cold, dead spoken word delivery, talks about all of these harsh interactions within what I guess is a romantic relationship, and they're fragmented, they're odd, the whole thing sounds like a nightmare. Now, this record is not all piss and vinegar. There are a lot of low-key moments in the mix as well, many of which are incredibly catchy and emotionally impactful, even if they are a little understated. There's the spacey and strange opener FLIMSIER, which I think is a perfect tone setter for the album, not only in terms of the loose and agonized rock instrumentals you are going to hear throughout the rest of the project, but the lyrics very much deal in a romantic connection of some sort, being over, being thrown away, and there's a heaviness to the feelings on this track that really cannot be described in words. Even Archy's refrains of feeling the weight of the world here just don't seem like enough. There's also the track SEAFORTH, which is some very airy and enchanting drum machine dream pop, which lyrically is one of the few moments on this LP of positivity and hope. Archy sings about being freer than a bird and overcoming dark days and having faith. Then on Tortoise of Independency, we have some heart-wrenching chords set to a very odd poem, where I think Archy is comparing himself to a tortoise of some sort as a means of showing himself walking slow and kind of taking in everything happening in the moment very slowly, as to like try to string these moments out, make them last as long as possible, while also waxing poetic on long gone memories. The track Our Vacuum is built off of these warbly little guitar licks that feel like something out of a Mac DeMarco song, with some very sharp but soft melodies. And lyrically here, Archy describes very powerfully in this monologue like an isolated place of love and connection. Some sort of vacuum, using lyrics like "in between the gaps of the stars, we lay in the dark." Toward the finish, we have another powerful moment on the record, in my opinion, If Only It Was Warmth, which lyrically, yeah, is one of the more redundant tracks here, but I think it certainly ties up a lot of the feelings of sadness and remorse on this LP, disappointment as well, stating over and over toward the finish, "If only it was warmth that you held." The jazzy guitar chords that underscore these refrains really enhance this part of the song too. Now, I'll also say this is a pretty long and dense record as well, so of course there are a few tracks, in my opinion, that pale in comparison to others. Be that on From the Swamp, where I think the steady rock grooves in the background kind of stale out after a while. Not to mention the watery, overwhelming guitars on this cut sound like they were mixed by somebody half asleep. Though I will say I generally find the instrumental arrangements and effects throughout this album to be really creative, unique, and kind of surreal. The entire record sounds like it exists in a world of its own, a desolate and lonely plain where it is nighttime and below freezing 24 hours a day. The vocal change-up from featured artist on the LP, Ravina, is a nice bit of added variety on the LP, though I do think the verse vocals come off a bit too hushed and understated, and overall I think the song kind of feels like a glorified interlude, even if it does does back up some of the lyrical themes earlier on the LP. Again, very interlude-esque, and doesn't add as much as shorter moments such as Flimsy, as well as the track When Vanishing, which is mostly an instrumental cut, string-kissed, some jazzy embellishments on the back end as well, and it's a beautiful moment on the back end of the LP that brings us toward its final moments, which are mostly dictated by Wednesday Overcast. Narratively, I see this track as kind of like an epilogue for the record. We're not so much in a moment of agony or angst over everything that's happened. Kind of feels like we're at some point into the future. Archy is talking about somebody, potentially the person being sung about mostly on this record, kind of being back around in the area looking for him. What that leads to isn't spelled out super clearly, but what is obvious, as it is said in the lyrics, is that a lot has changed since this time. I do love the instrumental on this track, though I will say the very distant and cold, flatly delivered spoken word vocals don't do a whole lot for me. But again, I do respect what this track does in terms of like tying a lot of the narratives up with a bow, and doing so in a pretty self-affirming way that shows Archy in a new, a different, and hopefully a better place since when everything sung about on this record transpired. Honestly, very sad, very potent, very powerful little record, and I think one of Archy's best and most impressive releases so far. Feeling a strong 8 on this one. Transition, have you given this record a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is another video you can check out. Hit that up with a link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, King Krule, forever!